Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to watch this presentation. A little bit about me, just very briefly. CEO of Thorsten. We are an MIS company based in the northern parts of England, where we are famous for our two types of very unique weather. The first is raining, and the second is about to rain. And my background, whilst I've been in print now for about 28 years, before that I started out as would you believe, a video games software developer back in the 1980s. And if anybody can remember the likes of Jet Set Willy and Manic Miner and Space Invaders and all that, well, I didn't have anything to do with any of them, but I did start out as a bit of a geek. So today, I've been involved in the technical aspect of integration and automation for as long as I can remember now. And I want to share some of my experience of the journey, certainly over the last 15 years or so, about automated workflows, or more specifically, just applying technology to your business systems and your environments. And it always amazes me why so many of these projects never achieve the level of the vision that is set out at the beginning. More often than not, they fail. People give up. And I can never understand why, because, okay, technology's got better and better and better as years go by, but people have never achieved what that technology is capable of. So I'm going to go through one or two issues that can trip you up, not in too much detail, because I've covered that in another session, but I'm going to introduce you to a strategy that might help you get better results. So, a very quick reminder, why do we want to do this? Why do we want to start pushing technology into our workflow? This slide, which I got from Heidelberg, I think does a great job at summing up one of the main problems. We've all seen for a long time that the administrative proportion of a job has increased relative to the overall job duration. And this slide shows that 55% of that, on average, sits within what I call the people function of a business. But perhaps more importantly, as well as it sitting within the people function of the business, is that area is either at full capacity or very near to capacity. So the technology downstream is able to get through more and more jobs, quicker turnaround, but the bottleneck has now moved further upstream. Technology is getting smarter, it's getting faster, and the showroom, they'll show you how you can make your machine set up quicker, how you can drive it automatically. So you need modern equipment, the software upstream, to be able to do that. And I think this is really important, and people don't realize that technology is a fantastic tool for creating a fantastic customer experience. So there's some statistics here that have come from sort of various quality sources. Brands can improve the customer journey, say a 10 to 15% increase, and then it costs less to actually serve them. And I'm sure you all know, that serving happy customers is a lot cheaper than unhappy customers. Because by using automation and technology, it frees up your people, it frees up their creativity from mundane tasks, from those tasks that are well defined and add very little value. It frees them up to be able to do more innovative thinking and to delight the clients. There's another statistic which came from Zendesk, which is a support system, that said that 66% of companies will leave after one bad experience. And this one, I think, is really, really important. So you have to be on what I said, the technology bus. You can't just put your head in the sand and think it's all going to go away. As I said earlier, we can't stop those manufacturers from creating faster and smarter equipment. They're not going to do that. So we have to sort of embrace it. The world is changing. We all have a demand for instant response and gratification. Can you imagine walking into your insurance broker and asking him for a quote and then waiting for a few days to get that sent through the post, or waiting for your airline tickets to arrive? We want it immediately. I went to pick my son up from college the other day, and I saw a girl put some money in a vending machine, and it didn't respond immediately, so she started kicking this machine. Eventually it did, but it just shows that people expect an instant response, and technology is the solution to that. Millennials do things different. We talked yesterday in the keynote about the educational program and bringing graduates into this industry. And they were saying how they were going to need to change. Well, this is true because we all remember those exhibitions of the days gone by where you were shoulder to shoulder. And it was crammed, and it was brilliant. There was a real buzz because that's when you learned about new things that were being launched into the industry. But those days have gone now. They do things different. They think we're crazy, turning up, flying halfway around the world to attend an exhibition. What they want to do is they'll just go and Google it. I'll just find out all the information I want online, and then I'm on. D-Scoop is very much about the collision of technology. I heard somebody who described himself the other day. He said, I'm a technology business that also prints. You've got to be smart. You've got to use things like apps, online portals, augmented reality. You have to embrace that because that is what your customers expect. Interestingly, a colleague of mine was moving house the other day, and she had to get a new attorney to help them with the move. And she chose the attorney that would send them text messages of the status of as things were progressing. That's why she went with her. And I'm sure there were other attorneys that were just as equally capable, but she chose the one that sent out that instant notification so she knew what was going on. Now, I stole this next sort of three little faces I stole from another D-Scoop I attended, and a very sort of a well-known marketeer, Andrew Davis, and he introduced us to the fact that there's only three types of technology. The first one's all the technology that existed when you were born. Nah, we're not really bothered about that. Then there's all that technology that was created after you were born, up to the age of, let's say, 30 or 35. We think that's cool. We think that's awesome. And then there's all the technology that was created after that, which we don't understand. It's all the technology that my kids use. There should actually be an angry face after that, which is the technology that's created after you're 50, where it just annoys the hell out of you. So you have to be on that technology bus. So whilst we've got all this fantastic technology around us, why do they continually fail? Because we've all seen the demonstrations, haven't we? This sales guy here is telling them we've got every acronym covered. This system is amazing. It does everything. And Meryl here is really blown away by what she's just seen. But in the real world, and they used the phrase yesterday about making it real, in the real world, the reality check kicks in. Because even though we have made some fantastic technological progress over the years, we can control now very, very detailed aspects of all of the connected architecture, printing equipment, post-press equipment. We can control that and set up all the systems automatically. So why is it that they still fail? Why do people have, I feel, almost like more problems today than they did before? And it's because the fact that we can create more detailed job instruction, if it's not 100% correct, what happens is it arrives in your workflow at a certain point and somebody has to correct it. And the more they start correcting it, sometimes it's actually easier to delete it and start again. So they delete it, they start again, but of course now downstream, the integrity of your workflow is broken because you've told process C to expect something that the people at process B have now changed it. So it's gone a little bit of a backward step, I'm afraid, because now, as soon as they hit that scenario where it doesn't work, everyone starts being negative, oh, this doesn't work, technology doesn't work, it's broken, and they ignore it. I recall a customer who we'd set up a system for them, and it was working perfectly, and they rang us up and they said, every time we print this job, the ink profiles don't allocate correctly on the press. We went on site, we tested it, it was fine. So we went in and sat in with the pre-press and said, let's do it and watch who's actually managing this job. In comes the order, he changes everything, in fact deletes it, puts his own imposition in and sends it down. Of course now it doesn't match. So, I'm going to show you here, this is a very, very sort of high-level description of what a typical workflow is. And you'll notice how things are flowing from the left-hand side through your business towards the right. I've not covered everything, but you get the idea. These green rectangles are there to represent the responsibilities of each part of that workflow. Customer, they have to tell you what it is they want. That's pretty key. They also typically provide the artwork. Estimating, the brain of the business, takes the requirements from the customer, creates a specification, produces an imposition, and of course gives a price. It flows through the workflow, ultimately popping out at the end with some fantastic management information. But there are a number of booby traps that catch you out at various stages, and they have a catastrophic knock-on effect downstream. So let's look at the fact the customer, they're the first in the chain. What if they give you the wrong instruction? Not that they would, but they often do. They'll tell you the wrong pages because they can't count. They'll tell you the wrong size because they can't use a ruler. Or they send you some artwork which has been created by a designer just to annoy printers. And then you get this knock-on effect. So estimating then does its best, comes up with the wrong price, the wrong specification. It goes through to order processing, that it gets delayed as we're trying to figure out what they wanted. But that job that got automatically with all its fantastic pre-setting got sent into pre-press, but of course it was wrong because the size was wrong. So he deleted it and passed it over onto press. Well, now none of the sheets match, so none of the pre-setting information can be applied. And of course, you can wave goodbye to feedback and any reporting. But let's say that customer got it right. What if estimating got it wrong? What if they didn't impose the job as production like it imposing? There are many ways we know to produce a job in this industry. They need to know, have we allowed for slowdown wheels? Where do we want page 1, on the front or on the back? When you see that person doing the demonstration in the showroom, they don't go into this type of detail, these booby traps that catch you out. The people who are actually on the ground have to deal with this every day. And there isn't one rule that applies to all. Some people prefer to have the low folio towards the back edge of the sheet, some towards the front, some on the front, some on the back. There's a lot of legacy that have built up in businesses. That knowledge needs to be captured. And of course, if it's wrong, then of course, you've got this knock-on effect downstream. Maybe order processing didn't capture what the right colours were, the dreaded unknown spot colour that then causes catastrophe when you get down into the printing area. And I'm sure that you get the idea. So, this is where I made a mistake. Yesterday I was talking about all making mistakes and being brave. I forgot to bring the white papers and put them at the back. So if you sit through the rest of the presentation, at the end there's a URL that'll tell you where to go and download the PDF. But I did go into the actual detail of all of those red and green squares, break down what technology you can put in place to address each one. But today is about a strategy, not just about technical tools. So how do we go about this? Well, I believe people need to introduce this idea of a shift left culture or a shift left philosophy. So what is that? Well, it has its roots in software development, and guess what? I come from a software development background originally, and it's all about the relative cost to fix a problem based on the time of detection. So the further left in the production, because software goes through production just the same way as many other things, it's cheaper to fix. So what does that mean in the world of print? So if I printify that, if that's a word, the red arrow shows the relative cost to address the corrections in a job as it flows through your workflow. So what I say when I mean introduce a shift left philosophy is we need to spend more time fixing things, capturing information further left, so that as it arrives in each stage, you have to spend less time, or ideally no time at all, repurposing a job appropriate for that particular function. Because if you can do that, then you are able to automate that. So I'll give you an example. We talked about those horrible people, the customers, that are just out there to make our lives miserable. So the customer says, hey, I need a price. It's 8.5 by 11. Give me a price. Estimating, not a problem. Here you go, buddy. Then the artwork arrives, and the customer service people, they pass it on to pre-press, and guess what? The artwork's come in, and it's the wrong size. It's 17 by 11. So do they mean that they wanted a quote for 17 by 11, and they just didn't understand? Or did they want this artwork to be resized? You don't know. Somebody, a human being, a person, a people, needs to get involved and make that decision. Problem is that by the time pre-press took a look at that artwork, it was probably in the evening. The people in order processing have gone home. So the following day, they say, hey, will you speak to the customer and ask them what they actually want? So they do that, and the customer says, well, I want you to resize the artwork. I can't believe you're only coming back to me today when I sent the artwork yesterday and you assured me that you'd get straight on it. So let's move that problem away from pre-press. Let's move it left. Same thing, customer asks for a quote, estimating oblige. Only this time, we implement some technology. So we capture automatically the content and we compare it with the actual job specification. Nobody's touched it. It's all happening by computer software in the background, some witchcraft. And what happens then is that the CSR is alerted immediately. Maybe even the customer's alerted immediately with an email that says there's a discrepancy. That's A, that's B, that's not Snap. So what happens is, whatever it is, whether they submit the different size artwork or they resize it or whatever, what happens in pre-press is that they only get the right artwork sent through. So they're happy, and the customer's happy, and they're happy because they think, wow, that was really cool. You contacted me straight away when I sent you the wrong information. So great customer experience. So shift left culture, just move all the problems left, get that fixed, and then we can all go, right? We'll just do that. No. And this is the reason I ran this particular session as a webinar recently. And I asked everybody, what were the main barriers to your automation project success? There was 21% said that we don't believe technology is up to the job, and 4% had lack of time or money. So 1 in 4 said it's down to technology or how deep their pockets are. But the rest, certainly the blue coloured, is all about culture. It's people. That was where the biggest barrier comes from. Barrier to change. So you need to make sure that you have the right people that are leading the project. So I want to introduce you to 3 people that you need. We've got the visionary. So that's everybody who's here at DScoop. So they know what they need to do. They know why they need to do it. And they're going to lead, they're going to inspire, encourage people to make mistakes and benefit from making those mistakes, make things better. They understand that technology is absolutely paramount to successful business. They know about the customer experience program. They need to be on the technology bus. And they're going to make sure that they drive change. Yesterday, there were so many parallels with the presentation that I watched, the keynote opening with this, about saying, break the habit, be brave, make it real. All of those things are very much about how you need to approach implementing a new workflow. So the visionary, most businesses have got a visionary. This person, or persons, is absolutely pivotal to any successful automated workflow project. Ideally, they have a very broad knowledge of all the different aspects of your company. They're not just biased to production or to sales or to shipping or finance. They've got a broad understanding. And they've been given the authority by the visionary to actually make changes. They can go out there, they can understand the tools, they can meet with the different vendors and identify what tools and technologies are needed. Do they need to buy some more licensing, etc. They are absolutely pivotal. But don't forget those geeks out there, the techies, because whilst the executor can probably communicate with suppliers, vendors, and make changes to their overall configuration, the best systems I've seen are those that have got an in-house team, could be a team of one or many, that have got that technical resource to build the odd, what I call a technological bridge, because you will hit bumps in the road. Those booby traps catch you out all the time. And if you've got a techie, they can build a bridge over that, draw in some information here, there, and everywhere, and drive over it. Without technical people, you've probably got to drive around that bump in the road. Or, if you've not got the right attitude, you'll probably just give up and just park up and go home. Then you need to build your automation task force. Reminded me of the A-Team. Anyone can remember the A-Team? I should have played the A-Team music, then you would have done. You need your executor. He's the one who's going to drive change, not get rid of people and execute them or anything. Your CSR, these are the people you need, well, the areas of the business that need to be represented. Somebody from customer services, definitely someone from estimating, definitely someone from pre-press, and someone from production. Or maybe you'll have press and bindery represented as well. You might have shipping, you might have scheduling, you might have finance, all of the different areas that get touched, but I suggest that that is your A-team. You then need to hold a project kick-off meeting. You need to define the vision and to understand what success looks like. What are the opportunities for automation? What can you do? Which areas of the business do you really want to improve? And this is really important. Number 3 there, understand what you can achieve, because you've been and seen the demonstration, and you might have seen that with vendor A, and you've got vendor B, and they're not all the same. Their capabilities are not identical. So I would recommend that you, in this first project kickoff, that you invite your MIS providers, your press company or your pre-press or whatever, but bring them into the room for that first meeting to find out what it is that you actually can achieve with their products. And make sure you've got the right tools. How many times that we've engaged in projects and it turns out that even the customer thought that they'd bought all of the necessary licensing, that when they saw the demo, they thought they'd got this particular versioning license or this automation engine, and now they've got to go and buy that separately. And it all becomes a little bit awkward. Number 5, plan in the review meetings. You have to follow this up. This isn't a fire once and forget, and it isn't going to work first time. It's a bit like those paper aeroplanes we were all throwing around last night. The first time you do it, it's not going to get very far. You are going to have to refine it. And this is really critical. The visionary, the leader of the business, needs to make sure that they give this team time off from their normal duties, because that's one of the biggest project failures. They need to squeeze this in to their normal, everyday duties. So then you start. You choose which process you're going to automate, and that might be job submission to a press, might just be an impose sheet that's already done. The work to arrive at that impose sheet has been done manually, and we're going to say, right, well, we'll automate that and make sure that it picks the correct press template, sets the right quantity, expected delivery time, etc. Find out if you've got all the right software and the correct versions of everything from your vendors, and go. And wait for the crash, okay? Because it will go wrong. Absolutely, I guarantee it will go wrong. So log why it went wrong, put it in a record, what you think could have been done to improve it, and then move on. Because we can't just stop and go all the way back over here and say, right, could we just change this and then send it all over again? We can't do that, not there and then. We can't do that real time. So when we have our review process, we are going to look at the logs, look at the errors, and find out what went wrong. It might be the wrong imposition, might be the wrong substrate was provided, could be the wrong size, it could be any number of things. There are so many. But then that A team decides what strategies can we put in place to actually address this. Maybe it's implementing some technology. I showed Enfokus Switch. Maybe it's actually choosing to move people where they sit. Maybe it's relocating estimators closer to customer service. Or maybe moving customer service nearer to production. And I've seen that used very effectively. I've seen people actually move their whole company around because it breaks down that barrier of communication. But if the visionary does one thing and one thing alone, that is to spread the why. Why are we doing this? They've got to be obsessive about getting that message across. Because people aren't mind readers. The rest of the team don't know what is the vision, why are we doing this? It just seems like it's getting in the way. They have to be positive, because they will, just like yesterday, there will always be somebody who will come up with that, well, it won't work because, when we get this type of job, that'll never work. So we can't stop. It was really made me smile when the presenter yesterday said that how many decisions are made on behalf of somebody else who's not even in the meeting. And I can think of how that applies to many of the systems I've been involved with. So they have to be absolutely obsessive, completely positive, completely telling everybody all the time, rewarding them for their achievements. Maybe introducing some actual reward. We have rewards in our company for people's alignment to the company's values, and I'm sure you have a similar thing. Maybe there's one for achieving automation goals. Because if you give people purpose, it helps towards motivation. If people don't have a purpose, then they don't. Brilliant. Yesterday they lined it up, all talking about keeping it real. How does this look like in the real world? So I'm going to introduce you to a customer of mine. I know there's other customers in the room tonight who are going to be grumbling under their, why didn't you pick me? This company tried and failed countless times to implement automation. They'd seen every demonstration, they thought they'd bought all the right tools and the right licensing, but time after time after time, they failed for many reasons. They commenced this journey again at around May, June time last year with a different attitude. And I asked them, they've done this by themselves, by the way, okay? I asked them, give me some bullet points that I can use in a presentation. They sent me some fantastic content. These were the challenges that they faced. Notice how none of them are to do with technology, whether or not the goals could actually be achieved. A lot of it is down to the people side of things. Mindset, attitude, culture, communication. That was their biggest problems. And their executor said, and I quote, it has not been plain sailing and has proved to be a very difficult project. We have had to overcome a lot of challenges. So it didn't work from pressing go. Oops. They also brought in the 3 key roles. Their CEO, he absolutely knew why. He had no idea how to achieve any of it, but he knew he needed to do it. And they had a CTO as well, who'd been on this technology bus for many, many years, and also could not understand why the rest of the business couldn't execute what the vision was. They had a main executor, which was the group IT manager, estimating manager, and pre-press manager. Strangely, the pre-press manager was the biggest barrier when they attempted this in the past. But with all the positivity that came from everybody else, and with the right tools that they put in place, he's become a real advocate. And then they had internal techies. Not many, They had some technical skills. They didn't have a team of software developers, but they had people who knew how to manipulate XML files and move things around and get the best out of the products. And then they lent on their suppliers. Can you help us do this? Can you help us do that? This was the software that they had. So there was our MIS. They used Kodak Prinergy. They used Kodak Upfront, which is a legacy product now that's not even supported. They have HP SmartStream for driving their Indigo, and they've got Heidelberg's Prinette offset printing and KBA. They wanted to get rid of that. They've been trying to get rid of that for years and years and years. But the press minders had been stamping their feet because they loved the documentation that it produced. But it created a real break in the workflow because it wasn't compatible with everything else. They added some imposition technology from us, and they added Enfocus Switch. So they managed to get rid of Kodak Upfront, added a license from us and some technology from Enfocus. And what they wanted to achieve was an online portal of content and ordering by their clients, pre-flighting. So I'm not just talking pre-flighting to make sure the PDF has got all the right resolution of images and the fonts and all of that nonsense. I'm talking about making sure that the PDF that's supplied is what we expected them to be supplying. Checking things like page size, number of pages, or they've supplied it in spreads or reader pairs, and providing feedback to the client before it gets anywhere near production. They used our layout library to produce impositions and drove preps automatically via Prinergy. And then they were outputting to 3 different devices. In their words, this was their main barriers to automation. This is what was causing their issues. Their signature number and naming was inconsistent. So when we see those live demos in the showroom, they're perfect, aren't they? They're always the same number of pages. They're always the same size. There's only ever 1 signature, maybe 2. But the real world is very, very different. And they had such a lot of different inconsistencies about the way that they were describing jobs. They had no way of automating it downstream. So it said that every job treated as its own entity in Prinergy. That was because they were just deleting the job and starting again. Mapping up InkKey data to the actual job specification never worked, so they'd delete the job and lose all the presetting information. They were using an unsupported product, as I mentioned before, and not their version of estimating. So their estimators were refusing to use a new product, and the new product afforded them all this opportunity for automation. But they said, oh, well, we like this and we want to be able to change this. So they only cared about their little world that they operated in rather than having a bigger picture. So how did they go about doing this? So guess what? They created their A-team, their steering stakeholder team. These are their words, okay? All I did was put them into a slide. They're their words. They created the customer portal. Their techies created a website that customers could log into and upload artwork and approve it and so on. They introduced our layout library to make sure they got consistent JDF imposition details. They removed Upfront, and I think they had a cake on that day because it was such a milestone for them. And they did that, they removed it. They didn't just sort of say, hey, we're not using it anymore. They used some technology. They replaced Upfront with their own technology that produced the documentation that the press minders were now happy with. They configured auto-combining of ink data and transfer. Now that sounds fairly simple because when you go in a showroom and you see it, it's all from the same vendor. But you know what? When you're splitting information across different press vendors, they all have a slightly different language. That's some technical gibberish that I have no idea what they mean. And they implemented switch pre-flighting and approval, which I sort of mentioned earlier. They hooked that into their own online portal. And they produced an error log. So here it is. This is actually one of their sheets. This was the one from pre-press. It had the catchy title of Automation Error Detection Recording Sheet, which is great. And those are real problems. So they just write down the date, the time, the job number, what the issue was, and then they'd have their regular reviews, they'd address these, and then they'd shift the problem left. And I know they did that, but actually I went to see them and they were telling me that they'd got a lot out of the webinar and said, we did approach that, we looked at it all the time, could we move the problem further left? So these were their lessons learned. Again, their words: meticulously test before moving to the next stage. This was really key, I thought. Be persistent. Be persistent, and your belief will become infectious. And I've seen that in them. They are always on the phone trying to move to the next stage now. They're in the process now of bringing all the finishing equipment into their automated workflow. And now they believe that everything can be addressed. So instead of having that negative attitude, they know that when they hit a problem, they will find a solution. And they accept that the journey will never end. And this industry is constantly changing. New ideas for products are always coming into the market. So they know that it will never, ever end. So they appointed an executor. They actually had what they called sub-executors, which was their pre-press manager and their estimating manager. They moved people around. The main executor, he actually relocated and he sat for 7 or 8 weeks actually in production so that he could absorb everything that they did, so he could see what the problems were. They brought in some new technology. They re-engaged with all of their suppliers, not just their MIS supplier. They had regular meetings. They started out every week. I think they're now every couple of weeks. And they maintained and reviewed those error logs and developed some more of their own technology. And this is what they've achieved now. They've got the job structure pre-flighting, fully automated in positions. And I do mean that, fully automated. Automatic page assignment. He rings me up and tells me how cool his system is, where the pages just drop straight in, nobody touches it. Their pre-press department was a significantly, very, very heavy-weighted team. There was about 8 people in it at one point, significantly less. Automatic press presetting. They got digital job submission in there as well as conventional offset. And the press layout documentation was really key to them. That was where, so up front, it was somebody's job to load the job details in and manually produce this spec sheet. Now they don't need to do that. And overall, they achieved the right culture. So as I said early on, I've forgotten the white papers, but you can go to that website and there's all sorts of information and resources on there. There's information, there's white papers about the webinar, about the culture, the 3 key roles, etc. So that's it from me. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? You're not allowed to ask any, John? No? Did anybody understand what I was talking about? Could you understand my accent? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Good.
The one thing that's coming to my mind is that I don't know if people in the group have different technologies, because we have a digital division with all HP, and we're using in focus. We recently acquired I'm calling it traditional print division, doing bumps, litho, engraving, and these technologies are not automated. And I'm racking my brains at how can we implement some technology take out as much waste as we can in terms of touch points.
Well, I'd say is that, well, that particular real life example, they have got those 2 types of technology in their business. So they clearly have been able to do that. A lot of customers we deal with do have a blend of different technologies, and you're right, the more different disciplines you've got, the harder it is to actually automate. You've got to almost have two different paths or 3 paths or more. But it's about the right mindset, I think, and to go into it with a very positive attitude, to say, I know I can do this. The tools actually are out there. It's the people that have probably hit so many barriers and so much failure that they don't believe in it anymore. Yes, John.
Some of the barriers we've
say technologically advanced, all have the mindset and willingness to do this. And that's been a real stumbling block for us. Do you have any advice for the audience on how to deal with those kind of people and how to sort of push them along?
Yeah, that's a good. It is a problem, and that's. Yeah, I think what John was saying was that not all suppliers are created equal, and that some of them are more willing to embrace and be part of your journey, and not all of them have got the technical know-how themselves internally. And I think that's a problem. And John's saying, hey, what do we do when we're turning to our suppliers and they're not able to help us because they don't really have the knowledge? It is a tough one, is that? It really is. And it's really just about connecting with the right people. Hey, or changing suppliers, John. You know, there's been a real brain drain in the industry. You know, it's as things have got more clever and automated and can be preset, it's almost like we've lost that little bit of skill on understanding actually what's making it work, what's happening underneath. I always liken it to when you used to put a screwdriver by your ear and listen to the engine. You'll be able to tell what's wrong with it. Now you've got to plug a laptop into it to find out what's wrong. So technology's sort of got a little bit in the way, which is what I was getting at with it being a backward step. But you've just got to find the right person in the supplier. Speak to your MIS company. They're already connected to all of these suppliers. So ask them for advice. Ask your peers, who do you recommend working with? And it's the worst news I get when I find out that a person I've been dealing with at a particular company has left. And they were my go-to guy whenever there was a problem. I remember with Kodak, there was a person there who used to be based in Belgium, and he left. And they've never replaced him, and then such a lot of knowledge has gone, and it's a real disaster for them. It really is. So thanks for the tricky question, John. There isn't an easy answer to that, other than, like I say, you just got to push the suppliers. Yes?
I'm actually living this, so that's fantastic. When you look at the industry as a whole, where are the different segments? Because I only see sort of what we're doing in our company. But are there different, segments, whether it be labels, whatever, that are more advanced versus less advanced in this whole automation?
I think so, yeah. I think, okay, so labels is probably less advanced, I would suggest, and things like packaging is less advanced. The commercial sector has had to become advanced because that's the part of the industry that's been squashed. They're the ones where print's become more commoditized. So you absolutely have to remove unnecessary steps. And that's why you're all competing for the same products with the same customers, using the same technology. So you've got to find a way to differentiate yourselves. So that's an area that I think have been more innovative when it comes to automation and so on. So the commercial sector. So I'm not going to say digital, I'm not going to say offset litho, I'm going to say commercial sectors, the ones that have been more innovative. Yes?
So when creating like your automation team, if you have somebody in the mix that is very resistant to, say, changing from one software to another, you want them on the team because you don't want them to feel left behind or out of the process. Is there a specific role you would put them in so that they felt
I was going to say fetching the coffee.
I know my opinion on the matter is not the right solution.
Well, yeah, interesting that, isn't it? Because the Taylor Bloxham real-world example there, they had no choice but to bring in their their pre-press manager, and he had been a real Luddite, he had been a resistant individual. They had no choice because they needed to. But interestingly, their estimating manager is a new estimating manager, and the old estimating manager was a barrier. He was a real barrier, so I'm not telling you what you should do there. But think about it.
You want me to give her a suggestion on that?
Yeah, feel free, yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you what we did. What we did, so we called the right people into the room. And we had one stood out just like that. And I spoke and said, this is where we're going. And this is where we're going. And you either need to be on this train or I need you to get up and leave at this point. And at that point, they know they're going to be left behind.
It is very hard. And hey, you know, we're a completely different type of business to print, but I have exactly the same problem. Always trying to sort of install the right culture across the people. And there's always one. There's always one that's got some, thinks you're out to get them. You know. Well, I believe that technology is the savior, actually, you know, because if you do not embrace it, then you will be left behind. You know, you can't say, hey, all these nasty suppliers and people inventing new technology are there just to make life difficult. You can't stop them trying to do that. You absolutely can't. Now, Paul, the executor at this business, he said one of the key attributes for his people was that they were absolutely enthusiastic and really, really behind it. Just as you said, you know, you've got to really be on board with this project, on board with this journey. You know, fit in or FO. Yeah, surprisingly, or not. Anything else from anybody? Might be time up. Thank you very much. Thank you.